Okay, so good day class. So today we'll be discussing the general rules of income taxation. Okay, so last time na discuss na natin yung mga types of income taxpayers, yung mga individuals and corporations as well as their classifications. So let's discuss on how to tax those individuals. So the first general rule is the residency and citizenship rule, which states that taxpayers who are residents and citizens of the Philippines, so take note, they should be both resident and citizen of the Philippines, such as resident citizens and domestic corporations. So, resident citizens and domestic corporations are taxable on all income from sources within and without the Philippines. So, when we say within the Philippines, those income na generate or na uh, na-earn ng isang taxpayer inside the Philippines, and without the Philippines, those incomes that na-earn ng isang taxpayer outside the Philippines. So for example, merong isang resident citizen na pumunta sa isang 5 days business trip outside the Philippines. Okay? So from from the 5-day business trip outside the Philippines, naka-earn siya ng income na 5,000. So even though na outside the Philippines na-earn ang income na yon, dahil resident citizen yung taxpayer, yung 5,000 na income na yon is still taxable inside the Philippines. Right? So that is only applicable to taxpayers who are resident and citizens of the Philippines. So, those naman, okay, so let's just discuss first this next one. The basis of the extraterritorial taxation. Resident citizens and domestic corporations derive most of the benefits from the Philippine government compared to all other class of taxpayers by virtue of their proximity to the Philippine government. So sinabi lang dito na dahil mas maraming na-derive na benefits yung mga resident citizens and domestic corporations dito sa Pilipinas, it is only justifiable na mas marami yung matatax sa kanila compared sa other types of taxpayers. That is why we are taxing these two taxpayers on the basis of their income from both inside and outside the Philippines. Okay? So this is consistent with the benefit received theory na sinasabi na kung mas marami ang benefit na na-receive, kailangan mas marami din yung babayaran mo. So the extraterritorial taxation or tax treatment of resident citizens and domestic corporations is also intended as a safety net to the potential loss of tax revenues brought by Situs relocation or the practice of executing or structuring transactions such that income will be realized abroad to avoid Philippine income taxes. So this treatment prevents resident citizens to earn their income from outside the Philippines. Kasi kung wala ito, mas preferable ng mga taxpayers na mag-earn na lang ng income outside the Philippines, right? Kasi kapag outside the Philippines, hindi na sila matataksan. Pero that is not the case under resident citizens and domestic corporations. So you might be wondering na resident citizen and domestic corporations lang yung na-mention dito. So what about yung mga other types of taxpayers? So any other type of taxpayers, for example, non-resident citizens, resident aliens, non-resident aliens, foreign foreign corporations, all of those, resident foreign corporations, non-resident foreign corporations. So all of those taxpayers, yung matatax lang na income nila are those income derived inside the Philippines, or those sources of income within the Philippines lang. So hindi katulad ng resident citizen and domestic corporations na lahat ng income nila whether within or without the Philippines is matataksan. Yung mga other types of taxpayers, ang matatax lang sa kanila are those income derived inside the Philippines. Okay? So just keep that in mind na any other taxpayers inside the Philippines lang ang matataksan. So for example, meron tayong non-resident uh, resident alien, right? Meron siyang foreigner na nag-stay dito sa Pilipinas. So dahil hindi siya isang citizen ng Pilipinas, hindi siya matataksan sa income niya na mare-receive niya outside the Philippines. So for example, uh, meron siyang na-derive na income from abroad. So that income, yung income na yon na na-derive niya from abroad, hindi yun matataksan dito sa Pilipinas kasi hindi siya citizen dito sa Pilipinas. Ang matatax lang outside are those citizens and residents. So yung mga non-resident citizens, hindi sila matatax sa mga income nila outside the Philippines. Okay? So take note on that. So the issue of international double taxation. The rule on extraterritorial taxation on resident citizens and domestic corporation exposes these taxpayers to double taxation. Right? So double taxation meaning matatax sila doon sa foreign country tapos matatax din sila dito sa Pilipinas. Right? So for example, kunyari is nanalo ka ng loto doon sa Amerika. So una, magbabayad ka ng tax doon sa Amerika kasi nga doon mo na-earn. So meron naman silang tax laws doon. So magbabayad ka ng tax doon sa Amerika. So dahil for example, resident citizen ka, dahil na resident citizen ka, matatax ulit yon inside the Philippines, right? Kasi resident citizen matatax within and without the Philippines. So, natax na nga sa Amerika, matatax pa rin dito sa Pilipinas. So, there is double taxation on that single source of income. So, to combat this, the NIRC allows a tax credit for taxes paid in foreign currencies. So, tax credit meaning, pwede natin kunin yung binayad natin sa pwede natin kunin yung binayad nating tax outside the Philippines tapos i-credit or itanggal from the amount of tax na kailangan nating bayaran dito sa Pilipinas. So for example, yun nga, sa example natin under sa nanalo tayo sa loto sa Amerika. For example, nagbayad tayo ng 50,000 pesos. 50,000 pesos doon sa Amerika. Tapos, dito sa Pilipinas, matatax ulit yung income natin, right? So, yung amount of tax na babayaran natin dito sa Pilipinas is, for example, 60,000 pesos. So, yung 50,000 pesos na binayad natin na tax doon sa Amerika, pwede natin yung i-deduct sa babayaran nating tax dito sa Pilipinas. So, 60,000 less 50,000, 10,000 na lang ang babayaran natin under sa Philippines. Kasi nga, we are using the amount of tax as a tax credit. Okay? So, in fact, resident citizens and domestic corporations pay minimal taxes in the Philippines on their foreign income because of the tax credit. Okay, so, yun nga, dahil sa tax credit, mas maliit yung babayaran natin na tax dito sa Pilipinas compared kung wala tayong tax credit. So, let's go to the Situs of income. So, the Situs of income is the place of taxation of income. It is the jurisdiction that has the authority to impose tax upon the income. Okay, basically Situs of income, situs meaning the place of taxation. So kung saan matatax ang isang income, matatax ba ito sa Pilipinas, matatax ba ito sa foreign country, matatax ba ito sa specific city, matatax ba ito sa Manila, matatax ba ito sa Davao. So, that is the situs of income. So, kailangan natin malaman kung saan ba talaga tayo magbabayad. So, the situs of income should be differentiated from the source of income. The latter pertains to the activity or property that produces the income. So, pwedeng hindi magkapareho yung source of income sa situs of income. So, for example, ang source of income natin source of income natin is for example doon sa Manila, right? Pero magbabayad tayo ang situs of income natin dito doon sa Bulacan. So that is an example. Hindi necessary na magkaparehas yung source of income sa situs of income. Situs is important in determining whether or not an income is taxable in the Philippines. Situs is particularly important to taxpayers, taxable only on income within. Okay? So again, yung mga taxpayers na taxable only on income within are those taxpayers aside from resident citizens and domestic corporations. So yung mga non-resident citizens natin, yung mga resident aliens, non-resident aliens, yung mga foreign corporations, right? So all of those are taxable only on income within the Philippines. However, it is also important to taxpayers taxable on global income for purposes of the computation of foreign tax credit. Okay, so here are the Situs rules. Okay, so this is the Situs of the income. So the first one is the interest income. So yung Situs ng interest income natin is the debtor's residence. Right? So for example, lang nagkautang tayo sa isang creditor. Utang tayo sa isang creditor. Ang creditor na yon taga Manila. Pero, tapos tayo naman nagre-reside dito sa Vigan. Even though na yung creditor yung makaka-receive ng interest income, right? Yung pagbabayaran natin ng interest, even though na taga Manila siya, ang place of taxation is in the debtor's residence or yung residence ng nagkautang. So in this case tayo yung nagkautang, so tayo yung debtor. So ang situs of income natin is the debtor's residence. So in this case yung dito sa Ilocos Sur. So Ilocos Sur yung pagbabayaran ng specific income tax kung yung interest income na yun is subject to local tax. So let's give another example. For example, pinautangan natin ang isang foreigner, right? So social tayo yung nagpapautang sa isang foreigner. Yung foreigner na yon let's say taga Singapore. Okay? So, even though tayo is nagre-reside within the Philippines, dahil yung debtor, so in this case, yung debtor is the foreigner kasi siya yung nagkautang. Dahil yung debtor is from outside the Philippines, right? Yung situs of income is from outside the Philippines. Right? So, kung non-resident citizen man tayo, hindi tayo magbabayad ng tax dito sa Pilipinas kasi yung situs of income natin is without the Philippines or outside the Philippines. So yung basis natin under sa interest income is yung debtor's residence. Next one is the royalties. So ang situs naman natin is where the intangible is employed. Okay, so intangible, ang royalties kasi, this is our share. Ito yung makukuha nating share of income sa isang bagay na re-register natin. So for example, nag-register na gumawa tayo ng kanta. Tapos re-register natin for copyright purposes. Tapos ang isang meron isang distributor na nagbenta, right? Meron kayong agreement na siya yung magdi-distribute ng song mo. Siya yung magdi-distribute ng mga albums mo, magpo-promote. So yung income na makukuha mo from that selling of songs is called royalties, right? Royalties yung tawag noon kasi re-register mo yung kanta mo. That is the intangible. Hindi mo naman makikita yung kanta mo, right? Hindi mo naman mahahawakan. That is an intangible. So, ang basis natin is where the intangible is employed. Kung saan tayo naka-register sa intangible na product na yon. So, kung naka-register ang intangible na yon dito sa Pilipinas, edi yung Situs of taxation or Situs ng income is inside the Philippines. Pero kung naka-register naman or naka-employ outside the Philippines, di syempre, ang Situs ng income is outside the Philippines. Number 3, rent income. So this pertains to the location of the property. So, for example, meron tayong nare-receive na rent income from a hotel, from, let's say, Japan. So, dahil yung hotel is mismo nasa Japan, yung Situs ng income natin is from Japan. Right? Nasa outside ng Philippines na yon. So, hindi yung matatax inside the Philippines kung taxable ka only within the Philippines. For example, foreigner ka man, foreign corporation, okay, non-resident citizen ka. So, kung any others ka doon, hindi ka magbabayad ng tax dito sa Pilipinas kasi yung income na yon is outside the Philippines. Okay, number 4, service income. Place where the service is. Okay, kung saan mo renender yung service. So, for example, nag-render ka ng services mo doon sa Manila, and di sa Manila yung Situs ng income mo. Kung nag-render ka naman ng service mo doon sa, let's say, outside the country, edi outside the country naman yung Situs ng income mo. Okay, so yung basis natin for service income is where the service is rendered. Okay, so let's go to gain on sale of properties. So, when we say properties, we have two types of properties. We have personal property or real property. So, yung mga personal property, ito yung mga movable property. Right? So, for example, cell phones, laptops, all of those are personal. While real property naman, these are immovable property. So, yung mga buildings and land natin, these are all real property. So, hindi mo naman malilipat ang mga yon. So, in regards to personal property, under sa personal property, kung ang personal property mo is domestic securities, right? These are presumed to be earned within the Philippines. Okay? So, basta domestic securities na yan, presumed to be earned within the Philippines palagi yan. Basta domestic securities. For any other personal properties, the Situs is on the place earned in the place. The Situs is earned on the place where the property is sold. Okay, kung saan man naibenta yung property. So, for example, kung binenta natin ang cellphone natin outside the Philippines, edi yung income is earned outside the Philippines. Pero kung binenta naman natin inside the Philippines, edi yung income is earned within the Philippines, right? So, just the place where the property is sold. While for the real property naman, ang basis natin is where the property is located. So, it doesn't matter kung saan man tayo nag-exchange ng pera. Ang importante kung saan yung mismong real property. So, for example, binenta natin yung lupa natin na nasa Ilocos Norte. So, yung transaction nag-take place outside the Philippines. So, binayaran ng customer natin, binayaran tayo ng customer natin, let's say, sa Korea. Right? So, even though nasa Korea yung pagbayad ng customer natin, dahil nasa Ilocos Norte naman yung mismong property, yung mismong lupa na ibebenta natin, ang income na-earn pa rin within the Philippines kasi ang basis natin is where the property is located. Okay, take note on that. Okay, and the okay, so last parts na tayo pala. Okay, so the last parts dividend income. So, kapag dividend income naman, kapag ito ay nanggaling from a domestic corporation, okay, if this comes from a domestic corporation, it is always presumed to earn within, okay, na i-assume natin na na-earn yon inside the Philippines. At hindi na kailangan i-specify pa. Basta dividend income from a domestic corporation, i-assume na natin palagi na yon ay income inside the Philippines. Same goes with the sale of domestic securities. Parehas lang sila. While for for dividend income from foreign corporation, if the foreign corporation is a resident foreign corporation, it depends on the predominance test. Okay? So the predominance test, this is the ratio of the Philippines gross income, of the Philippine gross income over the world gross income of the resident foreign corporation in the 3-year period preceding the year of the dividend declaration. So this, kailangan natin i-take consider kung magkano yung percentage ng income ng isang resident foreign corporation na nanggagaling from inside the Philippines, right? So for example, we need to consider this yung income nila for the previous 3 years preceding the dividend declaration. So for example, meron tayong dividend declaration on, let's say, January 1, 2020. So kailangan nating i-determine yung percentage ng income from 2019, 2018 and 2017. So kailangan natin i-determine yung percentage ng income na yon na nanggaling from the Philippines, right? So for example, ang total income from 2017, 2018 and 2019 is, let's say, 100,000. So kailangan natin malaman from that 100,000 kung magkano yung nanggaling from inside the Philippines. So if the amount of income na nanggaling from inside the Philippines is at least 50%, meaning 50% or more yung nanggaling from inside the Philippines, then the portion of the dividend corresponding to the Philippines gross income ratio is earned within. So for example, from that 100,000 pesos, 60,000 pesos ay na-earn from inside the Philippines. So 60% ang percentage ng predominance test natin. So in that case, the portion of dividend corresponding to the Philippine gross income ratio is earned within. So dahil 60% of the dividend income, 60% of the dividend income is earned within. Okay? Is earned within. While the 40% naman is earned outside the Philippines. Okay? That is because yung predominance test is more than 50%. Pero kung less than 50% naman yung result ng predominance test natin, lahat ng income na yun, lahat ng dividend income is earned abroad. Okay? So for example, out of that 100,000 na sinabi natin kanina, 40,000 lang yung na-earn from inside the Philippines. So that is equal to 40% yung na-earn from inside the Philippines lang. So 40% lang yung predominance test natin. So dahil 40% is less than 50%, all of the lahat ng dividend income na mare-receive natin, lahat ng dividend income na mare-receive is presumed to be earned outside the Philippines kasi nga hindi sila nakapasa sa predominance test na 50%. Okay? So again, depende yan sa predominance test. Kung ang predominance test is 50% or more, i-multiply lang natin yung mismong percentage para makuha natin yung amount na ma-earn inside the Philippines. Pero kung less than 50%, lahat ng dividend income na yon is ma-earn outside the Philippines. Okay? So what about non-resident foreign corporation? Kapag non-resident naman, it is automatically assumed na ma-earn yun abroad, meaning outside the Philippines na yon. So kung meron tayong dividend income from a non-resident foreign corporation, automatic na yon na ma-earn outside the Philippines. Okay? And last parts, merchandising income. So when we say merchandising income, ito yung mga amount na naibebenta natin, na merchandise natin. So, ang basis natin is where the property is sold. Okay, so kung saan natin naibenta yung mismong merchandise natin. And last, manufacturing income. Yung manufacturing income naman, as in differentiate natin from merchandising income. Ang merchandising income kasi, bumibili sila ng inventory nila. Right? While yung manufacturing income, sila yung mismong gumagawa. Right? Manufacturing nga eh. Sila yung mismong gumagawa ng ibinebenta nila. So, ang Situs natin, under sa manufacturing income, is earned where the goods are manufactured and sold. Okay, kung saan natin na manufacture and sold. So for example, kung na-manufacture inside the Philippines tapos naibenta din inside the Philippines, yung total income na yon is presumed to be earned inside the Philippines. Okay? Kung na-manufacture naman outside the Philippines tapos naibenta din outside the Philippines, then yung total income na yon is ma-earn outside the Philippines. Okay? Earned without the Philippines. Kung kung na-manufacture naman, na-manufacture inside the Philippines, tapos naibenta naman outside the Philippines, then the production income is earned within, pero yung distribution income is earned without. Okay? Tapos, kung na-manufacture naman outside the Philippines, tapos naibenta inside the Philippines, then the distribution income, distribution, corresponding to the amount sold, distribution income is earned within, while the production income is earned outside, outside the Philippines or without the Philippines. So, paano ba yung mga cases na magkaiba yung production income kaysa sa distribution income? So, ito yung mga cases na meron tayong parent and subsidiary corporations, right? So, for example, yung parent corporation, yung mismong magmamanufacture ng mga goods or mga merchandise natin. Tapos, yung mga subsidiary corporation naman, sila naman yung magbebenta. So, for example, ang parent corporation, nagmanufacture sila ng merchandise worth 100,000. Tapos, transfer nila ito sa subsidiary for 120,000. So, parang binenta nila ito sa subsidiary for 120,000. So, meron silang production income na 20,000. Tapos, yung subsidiary naman, binenta naman nila yung 120,000 merchandise for 200,000. So, meron silang distribution profit or distribution income na 80,000. So, pwedeng magkaiba yung manufacturing income or production income kesa sa distribution income. Okay? So that ends this chapter or introduction to income taxation. Okay? So thank you for listening, class. Sorry, medyo mahaba-haba. Tinapos lang natin itong discussion. Okay, so again, thank you and goodbye, class.